So a few weeks back, WhatCulture looked at the 10 best number 3s in gaming history, and it was a very fun video. We all had at least 3 laughs. And it was so much fun, in fact, that we were inspired to write a follow-up. But the question is, how do you do that? Do you do 10 more best 3s? No, my friend, you fool. You go for the 10 best number 4s in gaming history, because somehow that makes sense. So let's take a look at them today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 best number 4s in gaming history. Number 10, Saints Row 4. Now just take a look at this photo of the boss giving the thumbs up as they fall through the air. That is showing you exactly why Saints Row 4 is awesome, because this is just in the tutorial. Now Saints Row 4 starts where most things would finish, going full Spinal Tap in its desire to fit in absolutely every idea that the developers had. Alien invasion? Check. Superpowers? Go for it, mate. Bismarcky? You're damn right. Saints Row 4 is a glorious playground of a game, where the most fun to be had is simply exploring the world with your superpowers. If you've had a bad day, then leaping from skyscraper to skyscraper while Aerosmith's I Don't Wanna Miss a Thing plays in the background, well, it's definitely going to lift your mood. Saints Row 4's playground is further bolstered by some of the best playmates in gaming. It's a culmination of the bonds forged by the 3rd Street Saints over the course of the series, and features some brilliant character moments. Car singing with your besties, watching your friend move on from a toxic ex, and of course, the best romance in video game history. After the debacle of the 2022 reboot, why not treat yourself to a replay of Saints Row 4 and remember why you fell in love with the 3rd Street Saints in the first bloody place. Number 9, Gran Turismo 4. Now in our last video of the best number 3s, one of the most common comments was, "What, no Gran Turismo 3?" or words to that effect. But fret not, petrol heads, we didn't forget about PlayStation's greatest racing series. We just thought that GT3 was actually trumped by its sequel, which remains a triumph of the Fraser Crane philosophy of video game design, which is, if less is more, just think how much more would be. Gran Turismo 4 isn't so much a love letter to automotive racing as an epic saga. After setting the stage with Gran Turismo 3, the developers pushed the PS2 to its limits with the follow-up, with over 50 tracks to race on and more than 700 cars to drive, all powered by the best graphics seen on any of Sony's systems at the time. In short, GT4 is a game of astonishing depth, and you may never see the end of it, because even after 100 hours, your game completion percentage is still going to be under the halfway mark. But if you have even the slightest amount of petrol flowing through your veins, exploring Gran Turismo 4's raceways is time very well spent. Number 8, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. You know a game mechanic is successful when it keeps cropping up in later installments of the series. Case in point, Black Flag Sailing, which has shown up in numerous Assassin's Creed sequels following its debut in 2013's pirate-themed adventure. But honestly though, none of the subsequent Creeds have managed to match the high water mark, of the 4th entry in the series. Black Flag was the perfect marriage of theme and gameplay, with protagonist Edward Kenway's nautical lifestyle perfectly feeding into the game's systems of loot to upgrade to loot again. The game simply wouldn't have worked had Kenway been anything other than a pirate, so it's a good thing that Ubisoft made being a pirate so damn fun. Raiding other vessels, looking for sunken treasure, stabbing at sharks from Hell's Heart, all of these activities breathed life into the pirate fantasy that Black Flag was selling, and it was glorious. As the Assassin's Creed games have become ever more bloated, once again Fraser Crane's previously stated belief that more is more comes to mind. The good doctor's maxim may have worked wonders for Gran Turismo 4, but there are some games where less really is more. In Black Flag, Ubisoft found the happy medium between the two philosophies and delivered the best game in the series to date. Number 7, Metroid Fusion. Now some of you may be raising an eyebrow at this entry, wondering how Metroid Fusion made it on a best of list when Super Metroid, its much vaunted predecessor, didn't. But the answer is painfully simple, and that is that Metroid Fusion is just a better game. Apologies for the slightly confrontational tone here, but Samus Aran's 4th adventure is a successful evolution of the Metroid formula, one that takes everything that made the previous game great and then builds on it. The level design is tighter, the bosses are more memorable, and the plot, well, it actually exists. Samus's inner monologue gave gaming's most famous bounty hunter a welcome dash of personality, and the introduction of the Terminator-esque SAX, essentially a superpowered Samus clone, further humanized the formerly inscrutable protagonist. Watching Samus go from literally cowering in a ball to hide from her nemesis to being able to fight it on equal footing and eventually overcome it provided a strong narrative thread that had been missing from the previous entries in the series. Now granted, Fusion's follow-up, the disastrous Metroid Other M, showed what happens when Metroid's designers spend too much time focusing on the plot, but that just makes Metroid Fusion's achievement in perfecting the balance between gameplay and story all the more impressive. Number 6. Final Fantasy IV. The tale of how gaming's most inaccurately named franchise came to be is the stuff of industry legend. The original Final Fantasy was intended to be just that, one last hurrah from publishers Squaresoft before they went under after one too many failures. Except the game sold like gangbusters, Squaresoft was saved, and there was much rejoicing. Having said that, Square didn't exactly get everything right first try. The first Final Fantasy was a solid JRPG, but a bit light on plot. The second game was more narrative heavy, but with a wonky game-breaking leveling system, and the third game offered entertaining combat but a very dull story. Final Fantasy IV, though, well, that was the game that finally nailed the Final Fantasy formula. This game contained many of the tropes that would come to define the series: a conflicted hero turning on his former masters, the death of a party member, and a villain with more shades of grey than a spinster's library. It also introduced the series' trademark ATB battle system, an elegant fusion of real-time and turn-based combat, and was arguably the game where composer Nobuo Uematsu announced himself to the world with the theme of love, and the game's pulse-pounding boss battle theme signifying his immense talent. Also, just putting it out there, you spoony bard is still the best insult ever written in a video game. Number 5. Persona 4. Sticking with JRPGs, we come to Persona 4, the world's cheeriest murder mystery. Since Persona 3, each game in the series has cast a player as a high school student dragged into the world of supernatural intrigue. As such, it's kind of easy to visualize what each game would be if it were a real-life high schooler. The moody, downbeat Persona 3 is the class goth, the impeccably stylish Persona 5 is the school stud, and Persona 4 is just the one student that everybody likes, and an irrepressibly cheerful, upbeat force of nature that is impossible not to be friends with. And really, friendship is the beating heart of what makes Persona 4 great. The cast of misfits, idols, and weirdos are hands down the most entertaining group of party members yet seen in a video game. There are multiple 20-minute cutscenes where player interaction is limited to just pressing X to advance the dialogue, but the strength of the characters' personalities and the sheer quality of the writing will have you tapping away with delight, a contented spectator laughing alongside gaming's greatest circle of friends. Throw in some wonderfully compelling combat and one of the game's best soundtracks, arguably only surpassed by its sequel, and Persona 4 is a lovely 80-hour bubble bath of a game. Number 4. Doom 2016. If Persona 4 was content to take agency away from the player in its service of its impeccable story, Doom's 2016 reboot takes very much the opposite approach. From the off, Doom makes its intentions clear: grab guns, shoot monsters, and go. An ever-escalating carnival of shootery, the Doom reboot returned the seminal franchise to its roots after Doom 3's turgid foray into survival horror. Learning from its predecessor's mistakes, Doom makes the player the most powerful monster in the game and gleefully offers them the tools needed to carve their way through its iconic bestiary. Pinballing through Doom's many encounters as a whirling nightmare of guns, chainsaws, and sheer animal rage is satisfying as ever, even in the glut of boomer shooters that followed in its wake. Many have tried, but none have rivaled the sheer wow factor of this 2016 remake. It may have taken id Software 22 years and one giant misstep to craft a worthy follow-up to Doom 2, but the end result was more than worth the wait. Number 3. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. And speaking of monumentally important FPS games, Doom may have been a triumphant return to old-school values, but Modern Warfare was the game that made those values fall out of fashion in the first place. The fourth Call of Duty's towering success spawned a host of imitators in the decade that followed, but none came close to Modern Warfare's imperious heights. To be fair, COD 4 set a very high bar to reach. The perspective-hopping campaign felt genuinely revolutionary at the time, and led to some of gaming's most iconic moments. Levels such as All Gillied Up, Death from Above, and Aftermath carry the same heady weight as a vintage wine label, and evoke much of the same sense of satisfaction, that of experiencing a perfect exemplar of the craft. Oft limited, but never bettered, even by its own bloody sequels, Modern Warfare remains a staggering triumph for its campaign alone. The fact that it also contained a generation-defining multiplayer frankly feels like cheating from Infinity Ward here. Number 2. God of War 2018. Have you played the original God of War trilogy recently? Well, if not, probably better keep it that way. You see, Kratos' odyssey through the Greek mythology has aged, well, pretty badly. From the simplistic combat to the embarrassing edgelord attitude, best highlighted by God of War 3's infamous segment where you kill an innocent woman and use her body to prop open a door, Kratos' Greek adventures are the gaming equivalent of the crappy poetry you wrote in high school. It's kind of an embarrassing relic of an immature mind. But that's what makes the stunning success of 2018's reboot all the more surprising. Kratos himself is the best symbol for why this reboot succeeds and where the prequels kind of failed. The Kratos of this game is markedly different from the one-note psychopath of the original trilogy. Here, he's a world-weary father, ashamed of his past mistakes and desperate for his son not to follow in his blood-soaked footsteps. Neatly, the maturing of Kratos as a person mirrors the series' evolution as a game. The combat is given a much-needed overhaul, keeping the series' signature spectacle whilst also offering more depth to the player. And the linear levels of old are abandoned for a Metroidvania-styled world filled with upgrades and optional bosses for players to explore at their leisure. God of War is a triumphant reboot of a once-stale franchise, and arguably the second best franchise reinvention in gaming history, which begs the question, which is the first? Come on, you know the answer. Number 1 is Resident Evil 4. It couldn't have been anything else. I mean, I've talked a lot in this video about how these games influenced their franchises, but Resident Evil 4 influenced an entire console generation. Damn near every action game of the Xbox 360 and PS3 era paid homage to or blatantly stole from the Resident Evil 4 formula, copying everything from its revolutionary over-the-shoulder camera to the use of QuickTime events that were actually good. Sadly, many of these same copycats failed to recapture Resident Evil 4's lightning in a bottle. QTEs, for example, are often derided as a deservedly forgotten video game mechanic because developers just shoved them haphazardly in misguided attempts at player engagement. But if any of those attempts had managed to come close to the nail-biting tension of Resident Evil 4's QTE-driven knife fight, well, they would be remembered a lot more fondly. Because let's face it, the original Resident Evil trilogy is good, but this is just better. Resident Evil 4's romp through possessed villages, creepy cults, and Napoleonic terrors is still a wildly entertaining ride, and even now you can see how an entire generation of developers were inspired by Capcom's greatest game. And there we go, my friends, those were the 10 best number 4s in gaming history. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram, where it's RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Even though we spoke today about the best number 4s in gaming, you, my friend, yes, you listening to this video, are the greatest number 1 and should treat themselves as such with love and respect. You deserve all the best things in life, like love, happiness, and success, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? Don't let them treat you like a number 2, because you, like I've just said, are number 1, baby. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.